Hello, everyone. Thank you all for your patience and for joining us today. Welcome to the first session of our WFA Spotlight evaluating better ideas. Really happy to have you all here today. So for those who don't know, I'm Brenna. I support various WFA marketing forums from our CMO forum to marketing capabilities and in-house. So there is a good chance you've seen my name in your inbox before. I am thrilled to be joined today by Matt and Pieter-Paul, co-founders of BetterBriefs. With their extensive knowledge and expertise from their time as agency-side strategists, Matt and Pieter-Paul founded BetterBriefs and launched their first global study in 2021, which I'll share a bit more on that in a bit. If you're not already working with BetterBriefs, I do encourage you to check them out. We'll share contact details at the end, and we're more than happy to connect you with the team after the session. For those of you who may not be too familiar with the WFA, we're a global not-for-profit trade body with over 150 multinational brands and 60 national advertiser associations in membership, all of which drive our agenda and whose interests we represent. As said before, this is the first of our 2 sessions with the BetterBriefs team. We're happy to have so many of you joining us today from all over the world. So feel free to pop in the chat where you're joining from today. And now you may be familiar with our speakers thanks to their BetterBriefs project that was published back in 2021 to serve as the best practice guide on how to enhance the quality of briefs and thus to ease the disconnect between marketers and agencies. And we're thrilled about the newly published BetterIdeas Project, a groundbreaking global study by BetterBriefs in partnership with WFA. It is packed with insights from marketing and agency pros designed to sharpen creative decision-making and help you produce high-quality, impactful work. So today we'll be hearing from Matt and Pieter-Paul on findings from this study and how you can improve your own creative processes. Again, please feel free to pop any questions in the chat or the Q&A function. I'll be keeping an eye on both, and at the end we'll have some time to go over those and to address them. And without further ado, I'm pleased to pass it on over to Matt and Pieter-Paul. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Brenna, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you joining us here today, and hello to you who are watching this on recording. After such a great introduction, I'm not going to chat too much about us. My name is Pieter-Paul.
My name is Matt, as per the slides.
And let's start with why. Why did we undertake this project? Well, Matt and I believe great ideas are not just a coincidence. They don't just happen. They're actually the result of careful consideration and skillful assessment. Quite a lot needs to happen to get a great idea into the world. And luckily, as 2 ex-agency strategists, we've been part of the development of a couple of great ideas, but we've also been part of the development of not so great ideas and the painful process that comes with it. So I guess after we did the BetterBriefs project on the state of marketing briefs, we kind of felt we wanted to scratch this itch. What is going on with idea evaluation? So that's exactly what we did. BetterBriefs is a advisory and training business. We're here to help marketers brief better and realize more impactful ideas. We do that through bespoke training programs. We offer online courses. But why you're here today, it's all about knowledge sharing. We spend about 20% of our time interrogating what is going on. You see best practice guide there, sitting there on the screen, how to write the BetterBriefs. But today it's all about idea evaluation and assessment. Businesses and brands invest in marketing to drive better business results. That's a core belief that we have, and we think it's very healthy to always start and end with the commercial picture in mind. So achieving commercial effectiveness should be the ultimate goal of briefs and ideas. And the development and assessment and evaluation of ideas plays a crucial role in driving effectiveness. And it all starts, as you can see on the screen, with a clear marketing strategy. And that's already hard enough. You can see that in our previous study, listen to Mark Ritson. It is hard to write a clear marketing strategy, a strong, simple, guided marketing strategy. And the marketing brief summarizes all the strategic thinking you've been doing around that marketing strategy. It guides and informs the thinking of the agencies. And after the agencies receive your brief and they do their magic, after a couple of days or weeks, they come back to you with ideas. And that's a very tricky stage because that's a really crucial step where the marketing strategy is replaced by the marketing brief. And now it's the idea that needs to be chosen, because in the end, it's the idea that drives the effectiveness in market. So how we evaluate ideas, how we make creative decisions is absolutely crucial. So we hope that the findings of this project help you have some really good conversation with your teams, conversation with your agencies, and help you get to better ideas in less time.
Yeah, we've been fortunate to have some really great conversations with the WFA and also the IPA. So the IPA, the Institute of Practitioners of Advertisers, they are the agency representative body, I suppose, and they've been integral in this study as well. We've used some of their past statements actually and revisited those. We've also partnered with a research agency, Flood Research and Flood & Partners. So if you haven't checked them out, highly recommend them. We've been working with them for almost 10 years. We trust them and only them with our research. They have a different methodology, and you'll see some of the great questions that were asked and really getting to the bottom of how people emotionally engage with certain topics as well. So yeah, couldn't have asked for a better partnership. Great representation of views from all around the world, from the marketing side, from the creative agency side, and from the research side as well. So a really well-rounded view. Now, our sample, we worked really hard to get to our sample. Over 1,000 respondents, 1,034 to be precise, from 54 countries. Pretty amazing, 54 countries represented in this. We can make specific claims and robust claims, more importantly, around 3 countries, the USA, the UK, and Australia. With significant numbers there. We've got a great representation of marketers, obviously 409 from marketing organizations. Interesting, 15 or more years experience for 53% of the sample. And for creative agencies, 69% have more than 15 years experience, and there are 329. We've also broken it down by in-house departments, B2C, B2B. There's lots of different ways we can cut the data. We can't share everything with you today, but a really robust sample, probably the most robust sample into the topic of idea assessment that has ever been put together.
Yep.
Cool. So just to give you a bit of a guide as to the data you see in the following slides. So every time you see data in orange, it reflects the view of a marketer. Every time you see data in blue, it reflects the view of a creative agency. If there's not those two represented, we'll call them out, but we'll also see the statement as it appears in the questionnaire. So let's get into it.
Let's go. Here's the plan for today. 5 different sections for on the screen, and then the Q&A. We're going to start with the importance of strong ideas, but it's quite hard to realize them. We're then going to talk and zoom in on the blockers. What is holding better ideas back? We're going to talk about the impact of poor idea and evaluation practices. And we're going to close with some tips how to get to better ideas. If you've got any questions, start putting them into the Q&A bucket and we'll get to them at the end. Cool. Let's start with strong ideas are important but hard to realize. So ideas are really valuable, right? They're important. They solve problems. They leverage opportunities. It's the idea in the end that changes people's minds, that influences their behavior, that get them to do what you want them to do, right? So it was great to see that 76% of marketeers and 91% of agencies agree with the statement that strong creative ideas are essential to the overall success of an organization's marketing effort. Nice, easy start.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the 9% of creative agencies are thinking, not agreeing with that statement, but that's okay. That's their prerogative, I suppose.
And throughout the report, you'll see that we had some input from some great people, including from Stefan, who some of you might have just seen in Brussels. Stefan, who is the CEO of the WFA. Creativity is the lifeblood of our industry and a core driver of growth. And we like this quote very much because you can see the direct link there between creative thinking and commerciality. And we think that it should be the start point at the end point of every brief and idea. Okay, let's make it a little bit trickier. So in order to change people's minds, An idea needs to stand out. It needs to earn people's attention. However, many ideas fail to earn people's attention because they don't stand out. They get lost in the sea of sameness. And in fact, 54% of marketeers and 75% of agencies agree with the statement that most creative work does not stand out. Right? This is really concerning because we live in a time of general fragmentation. We get that, but attention is getting incredibly scarce. So if we don't stand out, we won't be earning people's attention, and then all the rest is kind of for nothing. And we're setting our investment money basically on fire.
Yeah, one of the things that Pieter-Paul and I used to do with a lot of our clients when we're working with agencies, leading agencies or at agencies, was actually pinning up the work of the category on a wall to see what the behavior of the category was. What are the conventions of the category? What do we not want to fall into? What are the traps we want to avoid? How can we make sure that our work does stand out in people's minds? Because this is, as you say, it's flushing money down the toilet.
Yeah. We think that we live in an age that we've never known more about how advertising works. We've all read the great studies from Field and Monet on how to drive effectiveness. A lot of work has been done how the mind processes ads. A lot of great work coming from Australia on distinctive brand assets. There's so much knowledge available to us to make better ideas, but still, we don't believe that the quality of the creative work is getting better. Don't take that from us. It's 53% of marketeers, just over half of marketeers feel that the quality of creative work is getting better over time. And only 24% of creative agencies agree with that statement. So what is going on? We need to dive a little bit deeper. Well, this whole process of making creative decisions and evaluating ideas is actually not easy. It is a hard responsibility to have. It might be quite a fun and excitement stage and an exciting role of the responsibilities of a marketeer. But we are admitting that it's hard, that it's not an easy thing to do. And 64% of the marketeers and 71% of agencies agree with this, that it's a hard thing to do. And it's tricky because ideas are really fragile, right? We need to manage them really carefully and with respect.
And when ideas show up, they're usually in draft form. They're usually in a form that requires our imagination to take them to that place where we think they will have that impact. So it is a tricky art. I remember sitting in agencies having conversations with creative directors, them sharing their ideas with me as a strategist and not knowing how to respond. How do you tread carefully between providing really constructive feedback and not damaging all the work that has been done without necessarily understanding where it could go? Creatives aren't always great at sharing their ideas as well, so it's a really tricky moment.
Yep.
Cool. So let's have a look at what's holding better ideas and idea assessment back. The first, and no surprise, that the industry lacks training. So only 27% of marketers and 30% of agencies are well trained in how to evaluate ideas. So both sides here admitting that it is not an inbuilt or a trained skill, that we often just learn on the job rather than being formally trained. And that's probably why we A, find it difficult, and B, are not producing work that stands out, right? We're not setting ourselves up for success in formalizing this training.
I was very lucky. I was, I think, 5 or 6 years into my career when a creative director took me aside and actually explained to me how I should be evaluating an idea. And when you think about this, when you take this out of our category into other categories, it is weird, right? This lack of training on such an important decision. So when's the last time you boarded an airplane with a pilot that didn't receive any training, or went into a doctor's office where the doctor didn't have a medical certificate or didn't finish medical school, right? It's a specific issue in our industry, but it's really hurting us.
What we're also seeing is that the quality of the feedback being given to the agency might also be part of the reason why we're not realizing strong ideas, right? So 52%, or just over half of marketers, agree that they are providing clear and constructive feedback. So 48% are saying they're not always providing clear and constructive feedback, which is worrying. And only 30% of agencies are saying that they get that clear and constructive feedback all the time. So it's a really tough position to be in. Are agencies speaking up in this moment? Are your agencies challenging you and saying, hey, this is not as clear as it could be. We're not sure what you want us to do. Are you diagnosing problems rather than giving solutions as the marketer as well? So the marketers do need to fight for clarity. It can be difficult within organizations, wrangling lots of people's feedback. We know lots of stakeholders get involved. We see it with our clients day in, day out, how many approvers there are. So we need to fight for clarity. Don't send over ill-baked, ill-considered, unaligned feedback.
And I think we are neutral in between these two parties. We just want them to communicate with each other better. And it starts with having a conversation. Have a conversation maybe next time you're sitting down with your team or with your agency and say, how can we make feedback better? And are we 100% clear on what you're being asked to do? Because agencies sometimes don't want to come across as difficult to work with. They might not be completely clear what you're asking them to do, but they kind of just take it away and say to each other, oh, let's figure it out back at the agency.
So is this happening everywhere? So unclear and inadequate feedback. Yes, 55% of marketers in the US are saying they provide clear and constructive feedback. So 45% no. 59% of UK marketers are saying their feedback is clear and constructive. So again, a big gap there. And the same with Australia. So really aligned across our three main markets there as well, that the quality of the feedback has a long way to go and we can improve significantly here.
Yeah, that's a global issue.
Yeah. So let's also take a look at the approval process. The skills and the training are one thing, but how is the process helping us realize great ideas? Is the process conducive to helping ideas flourish or not? And what we're seeing here is that only 56% of marketers are saying the client approval process works well. So them looking internally at themselves saying, yep, things are working pretty well here. Again, a worrying number, I would have imagined. And only 23% of agencies. So it seems that process is holding ideas back from seeing the best ideas from seeing the light of day. So how do we make sure that we're giving our ideas the best chance for success? With these kinds of numbers, it's suggesting that we don't have the right processes in place. So how do we improve this? How do we revisit this? How do we have that conversation with our agency? Because it is a dual responsibility, right? The agencies have a way of working, have a way of getting to an idea. It is an iterative process. It doesn't just land upon them a great idea. So they need room, they need space, they need stimulus to be able to do their best work.
Yeah, and it needs a fair bit of work, because this is some data from all respondents combined, hence it's in green. And we asked them to describe in one word or a couple of words the approval process when it comes down to getting ideas signed off. And what we're seeing here is not a pretty picture, is it?
No, inconsistent, slow, subjective, painful. These are words that I would liken to putting in a tax return, not in dealing with ideas and creativity and something that should inspire us, right? So it's a tricky thing. And yes, sometimes things of great worth are hard to find, and we know that, right? And so some of this is needed. Some of this, but again, these words really paint a really poor picture of what's happening when it comes to client approval processes in particular. And I think this is a quote from someone from an agency who's experiencing this firsthand.
Yep. Jo Arden is Chief Strategy Officer at AMV BVDO London, so not the smallest agency. And she says creativity dies in committees. We need to accept that. After views have been heard, we need a clear decision. So she's painting a picture here of too many people getting involved and a bit of death by 1,000 cuts. And maybe you've experienced that yourself. When you go back to the stories of the greatest and most effective ideas, it's usually a story of a strong marketing leader that is quite clear in what she or he wants, and a small group of people getting there together, working in partnership, because it is a partnership between a brand and an agency, right? You need to get there together. Everybody's in it for the same thing.
Absolutely. You need a shared creative ambition. That is for sure.
Are the right people signing off on a creative ideas. Many people get involved, but it's critical that we have the right people signing off. It's perfectly fine when you have mid-level marketeers sharing their opinion on it. Kind of not recommend getting other people involved, like your friends or your wives or your partners. Everybody, the problem in our industry is everybody can have an opinion on ideas, but it doesn't make their feedback professional. It doesn't make their feedback constructive. It is critical that we have the right people signing off on the idea, but only 62% of marketers believe that the right people are doing that. So if you invert that stat, it means that more than a third of marketers don't believe that the right people are signing off on them. We have a little rule in our organization. It's basically the marketeer that signs off on the brief should be signing off on the idea. Right? The two are actually connected. One leads to the other. So let's have just consistency in that same person.
Yeah, we see a lot of organizations where marketing teams think that, well, they let the brief pass easily because they think they can catch it or they think they can craft an idea when it shows up. So again, we need to make sure the input is right.
All right. Good ideas, good briefs spark ideas, right? They provide a springboard for creative agencies to leap from. They should propel them forward. They should guide and inform their thinking. They shouldn't prescribe what the solution is. And therefore, briefs play an absolute crucial role in creative decision making. They play a crucial role when you're evaluating ideas that come back from the agencies. However, what we're seeing here, that the brief isn't used enough as a key tool to evaluate ideas. Only 50% of marketeers and 23% of agencies religiously use the brief to evaluate ideas, right? So we need to really up that. It is really good practice to start the first creative idea presentation with just a recap of the brief. Right? Spend the first 10 minutes recapping the brief to put everybody on the same page. Let everybody land as well. Everybody's coming from different meetings with different mind states. We need to zoom in and prepare our mind to open up, to receive big creative thinking. So use those first 10 minutes to recap the brief is a really good practice.
A few thumbs up and hearts coming through, Pieter-Paul. So this is obviously hitting a chord. And this is something that, I personally would take the brief with me to every meeting. By the end of the project, the brief was tattered. It had notes written all over it. But it was there. It was there every time. It was in my notebook every time I turned up to that meeting, because that was my touchstone. That was the thing I was referring back to. Until the idea is approved, the brief is your guiding light.
Yeah. And maybe one more thing on the brief. Let's make sure that we are clear on which brief is used to evaluate the ideas. Is it the marketing brief that you as marketeers write for the agency, or is it the agency brief? Right? We don't really mind. We have seen both situations work well, but the worst situation you can be in is that you are looking at your brief and the agency is looking at their brief, because that creates confusion.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So to evaluate an idea professionally, a brand should have criteria in place how the ideas will be evaluated, right? Criteria that capture the type of idea the brand is looking for. Criteria that capture the creative ambition that the brand and the organization has set. However, only 10% of all respondents state that criteria are used consistently. That means that 90% are not using criteria, right? And when criteria aren't in place, it becomes very, very subjective. It becomes kind of a subjective discussion on who's right? Sometimes the hippo, the highest individually paid person in the room might win the argument. Sometimes the people with the loudest mouth. It's a very dangerous situation. Criteria help guide and help you find and select the ideas that are best for your brand in the context that they have been set. And maybe again, let's take it out of the category. Let's take it out of marketing. When you brief your interior decorator, when you've bought a new house or apartment, of course you're going to give him or her criteria on what you want. It's not, hey, interior decorator, have at it, right? You set them off, you give them criteria. Anyway.
Yeah, if all this is new to you and the idea of evaluation criteria is new, don't worry. We're going to talk about maybe some evaluation criteria and what they might look like a little bit later on. So yes, it might be news to some of you. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the impact of these poor assessment practices. So we don't have criteria in place. We're not using the brief. It does become a personal opinion fest, a personal opinion free-for-all. And don't get us wrong. Our experience is important. We have many of us have experienced a lot as marketers, many years on the job, and that counts for a lot. The problem is if we're just debating from our personal opinion point of view, then it's really hard to come to a consensus.
Yeah.
So if we don't have those tools in place, when we don't have something objective in place, then it really becomes difficult for us to reach a decision. And that's what it is, right? This is about the art of creative decision making. And so personal opinion has no role there. So 84% of marketers, 89% of agencies agree that personal opinion is having a big influence on decision making. Unfortunately, it's tricky. And this is to Pieter-Paul's point. It's usually the highest paid person's opinion that wins the day.
The way you can recognize that personal opinion shaping the feedback is when people start to use the word I a lot. They start to use language from their perspective, which they never should be doing. They should always be talking from the target audience's perspective. They should always be talking from the brand's perspective. So that's a clue that someone might be using their personal opinion to shape their feedback.
Another impact of poor assessment practices is just the sheer number of rounds of revisions, of rework that it takes to get to a final and signed off idea. Five. It's a mind-blowing figure, right? For us, that is going around the houses 5 times to get to something approved. Yes, a poor brief could be part of that, but we're not evaluating work in the right way. Remember that process: slow, subjective, painful. These words are used because this is what's happening, right? We're spending way too long getting to a signed off idea. More time should be spent up front, making sure that the direction is clear, so we have something that we can evaluate with much more rigor than what we're doing now. So again, we're setting ourselves up for failure here, because as we go through more rounds, the care factor decreases. We settle for substandard work sometimes, and we just want stuff off our desks. So again, the effectiveness of what we create is lessened because we're going through more rounds.
And we ask a lot of marketing teams, how many people get involved by a brief and with evaluating ideas? And in that entire process, it's any number. When you think about the people who write the brief, who approve the brief, who receive the brief, who work on the brief, account managers, creative, copywriters, designers, that number is somewhere between 30 up to 150 people that have to go through 5 rounds, which is a lot of time and a lot of money. You might be thinking now, oh, that's not happening in my situation. What we're getting back from the data is a very consistent picture from all over the world. So marketeers say it's 4.8, creative agencies say it's around 5 rounds. In-house departments are not very different, not much of a difference between B2B and B2C marketeers, and not much of a difference between the different countries. Perhaps the most important number on this slide is sitting at the bottom. So the IPA asked the exact same question back in 2007. And back then, respondents said it was 3 rounds. So it's costing us more rounds, 2 additional rounds to get to a final signed off idea. Right? That's a very concerning development in a day and age where we know more about how advertising works than ever before.
For work that's not standing out and that we think the quality is not progressing. Okay, cool. Got it.
All right. Feeling proud about the work you do is very important in any profession, right? Purpose is super important. And we wanted to get a better understanding of how proud our industry feels. So we asked respondents to share what percentage of the creative work they've been involved with across their careers they felt proud of. And what we got back, we feel, is pretty shocking. Marketeers are only proud of 36% of the work they've been involved with across their career. It's even less for creative agencies, 26%, and in-house agencies are sitting somewhere in between. The sad conclusion is that we don't feel proud about the majority of the work we produce and put into the world.
Yeah, if I was I don't know, a furniture maker, and I was only proud of a third of the tables that I made, I'd feel that was not great. Yeah.
Yeah, I would change careers if I was that furniture maker.
Yep.
Developing a great idea is tricky. It's complex. It needs a strong and trusted relationship between a brand and an agency. And unfortunately, this status that we have here on the screen is very concerning because agencies are starting to lack trust in marketeers. 70% of agencies, they state that they don't trust the creative judgment of the marketeers they work with. So to those agencies, we say, well, have you expressed that to the marketeers that you're working with? And to all the marketeers on this call, this is an invitation to have a conversation with your agency. All of this report is available for download. It is designed as a conversation starter. Hey, there's these two guys with these weird stats, but how's our relationship going? What can we do better when it comes down to feedback, when it comes to trust, et cetera, et cetera? Use it as a conversation starter.
Yeah, don't take it personally, but the agency person sitting across the table is more likely than not to not trust your creative judgment.
Yeah.
And this is where this quote from Dagmar Janke from Nivea and from Beiersdorf, it's so important, right? Trust is built. It's built between the relationship that we form. It's a mutual give and take. How do we want to share responsibility for creativity? Because it's not just the agency to come up with out of the box thinking. We need to set the conditions for it. We need for them to be able to look at us and say, we are on the same side. We want the same thing. We want impactful creative work in market that is going to drive results for our business. If you get on that page with your agency and you're pulling in the same direction, then that trust will increase significantly, right? That's what we're looking to do. We want to be on the same team.
All right. So start getting your questions ready. We're going to end with giving and sharing you some tips and sharing some knowledge on how to get to better ideas. Well, first of all, set your agencies up for success. Have a conversation with them, as we've now mentioned a couple of times. If your agency clearly indicates what they need that you want them to indicate what they want from you. You want an open conversation. And as a marketer, you want to check in with your agencies, how they were going. Don't ask to see maybe the idea early. Let them do their magic.
Yeah, look, and inspiring your agency doesn't happen necessarily in the room when they're presenting ideas, right? It happens well before any concept presentation. This is in the lead up. What is our ambition? We've said it a few times, our creative ambition. What is your creative ambition as a brand? How do we make sure the agency is on the same page? We want to share work that inspires us. Look outside the category, look in the category, look at whoever you like, but this is the type of work that we want to make and set your agency up for success in that way.
Yeah, and maybe include in the conversation, where's your creative limit? What is too far?
Yeah.
Okay. Why is this so important? Marketeers who inspire the agency to do their best work are 3 times more likely to feel proud of the work they are involved with. All right, there's a direct correlation between marketeers who really understand and work with agencies that they feel more proud about the work they make.
Yeah. Some marketers feel really disconnected to the creative process or from the creative process. They feel like it's more of a baton pass. I'm going to put a brief in. The agency is going to come up with these amazing ideas, but I don't really feel involved with that part of my work. So how do we make sure that, again, this is part of it. This is your role in the creative process, is to provide that inspiration to say, hey, this is where we're headed. And we know that not enough people are using the brief when the work shows up. However, we know that marketers, 92% of them, and agencies, 90% of them, say that briefs are a key tool for evaluating ideas. So make it a religion. Make sure the brief is with you at all times. The brief helps you determine whether the work the message is coming through the work, whether the RTBs are supporting the message, whether the work is designed for the audience as you've intended, overcoming the problem that you've stated in your brief. So always have the brief with you.
It tells us that marketers know what to do. They're just not doing it.
Yep. And lastly, we spoke about the absence of criteria for many organizations. We're not suggesting that this is the most groundbreaking criteria. This is the basic minimum that we should be doing as people responsible for putting creative work into the world. The first is, and this is an aligned view from marketers, creative agencies in-house, this is a ranking of the type of things that people look for, criteria, when work shows up.
So the way to use this, if you're in an organization where it's constantly a personal opinion fest, and it's whoever screams the loudest will get to choose the idea. This is when you use it. It's not groundbreaking, as Matt's saying, but sorry, Matt, I just want to reiterate that.
This is the base. This is ground zero. This is where we need to be. Is it engaging for the target audience? Often we're not the target audience. Let's make sure that we're designing communications and respecting the people that we're designing communications for. Is it on brief? Can we go back to the brief? Can we hold the brief up and see the clear connection to the work? The brief should be a contract, right? That's the contract, the agreement that we have with our agencies. Thirdly, will the creative work earn people's attention? We know that not enough work stands out. To Pieter-Paul's point earlier, we're setting money on fire if we're not earning people's attention. And lastly, is it well branded? Is our brand instantly recognizable through the work? Branding doesn't just mean a logo, as we all know. Are our distinctive assets coming through? Are they representing our brand in the best possible way? So again, misattribution, we don't want to be misattributed with our competitors. Otherwise, again, we're not using money as wisely as we can.
Applying criteria. These are criteria, for example, will really lift the quality of the conversations you have before you give feedback to your agencies.
Absolutely.
And it will help you make better creative decisions. So let's maybe also end where we started. We're going to end with a quote from Stefan. Advertisers and their agencies must invest time, effort, and greater faith in fit-for-purpose briefing, evaluation, and approval processes that foster collaboration and trust in order to generate bold ideas, right? So the whole reason here is commercial. And I think we need to get better at the skill and at the process to let creativity flourish in order to drive a commercial result. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, or on the recording. The report is ready for your download. It will be available from today.
And sent around, actually.
And sent around.
Yep, all good.
It is downloadable via our website. It will be made available on the WFA's website. It is there to start conversations. So please download it. And you can also download our previous studies and publications. And that said, I'm going to stop sharing the slides and we're going to start the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was super interesting, and it's interesting to see both the disparity between marketers and agencies, but as well as then times where they're very much aligned. So super interesting. One thing that I see in the chat so far, which by the way, we do have Matt and Pieter-Paul for the next couple minutes. So do pop your questions in the chat or the Q&A function. But one comment from Susanna. One strategy we introduced was to include the approved brief and basic content guidelines in the concept presentations to keep everyone on the same page, especially when working on multiple projects, clients that are not focused solely on this project, which seems to have helped them a lot, and for clients to feel heard and involved and thus get better feedback. So is there anything on that you want to share, or any comments on that?
No, I think that's Pieter-Paul was just turning off an alarm here. No, I think it's a great strategy, making sure that everyone's on the same page, because often new people will come into a process as well and into a project. So once ideas and concepts develop further, you might bring in new people. You might start to bring in comms planning capabilities and other. So making sure that everyone is aligned, they're understanding the starting point. That's often the most difficult thing is what has the starting point been? What journey have we been on? So making sure that everyone is across that is super important. So glad to hear that, Susanna, that strategy, it sounds like it's working for you.
Yeah, wonderful. Another question, when evaluating whether on brief, what are the key elements of the brief to pull out?
Another good question. Yes, hopefully
Well,
yeah, you go.
Well, a brief is a puzzle, right? And all the pieces are connected. In order to write a brief, you need all the pieces to fit together perfectly. So it's not just one bit, it is the core bits of the brief. I guess maybe we can talk about the 4 situations that can happen when you're dealing with an idea in front of you. And there's 4 things that can happen. You can have an idea that is, there we go, we've got another alarm going. You can have an idea that is on brief and will help you realize your objectives. That's the perfect situation to be in. Approve the idea and it's all good. A second situation that can happen is that an idea is off brief and it won't help you realize the objectives you set in your brief. In that instance, you might have to question if you've written the right brief. You might have to rewrite your brief. Then an easy situation to deal with is when ideas are off brief and they won't help you realize your objectives. Stop the idea there and then. And then the most tricky situation to deal with is when an idea is off brief, but it will help you realize your objectives. That is then we say a brief is a means to an end to get to an idea. So it is there to help creativity flourish, but sometimes creativity can work in weird and wonderful ways.
Yeah,
so,
did you touch on the ingredients of a brief and how to check if it's on brief? So I guess the way that I would look at it, if it's on brief or not, is firstly, a good marketing brief contains some kind of message, single-minded message or proposition or key takeaway, whatever, however you call it. There are so many different briefs and templates and whatever we like to call it a key message. Is that key message coming through? That's the direction, one of the key elements, key piece of information that you've chosen as a marketer to convey to your audience. The one thing that you want to say, is that coming through really strongly? So firstly, I go, okay, if it is, then great. That's one bit ticked off. Are the reasons to believe? So the things that underpin your message, the key proof points, the facts, substantiation, evidence, again, however you decide to call them, are they underpinning your message in the right way? Does the concept allow for those to hang off that idea in a really easy way? Does it feel like it's really consistent with what's showing up? Will our target audience, is our target audience visible in the work, or will they respond to the idea? Again, putting ourselves in our target audience's positions.
Does it tap into their needs or interests or wants or desires? Not literally, but it needs to resonate with them in some shape or form. And ultimately, does it ladder up to the objectives we set? And we like to talk about 3 types of objectives: commercial, behavioral, and attitudinal. Right? What the commercial start picture and end picture is where it all starts and ends. What kind of behavior do we need to realize via the idea to achieve the commercial end picture? And what needs to shift in people's brain in order to realize the behavior that will deliver the commercial result? Anyway, we're getting quite passionate about the whole brief thing.
Yeah, no, and that's what Pieter-Paul said earlier. That brief is like a puzzle, right? Your attitudinal objective will connect into your message, will connect into your audience's needs, and that's why a well-constructed brief is so helpful when you're assessing the work. Too often briefs are not, they're not as directive as they should be.
They're Frankensteins, some of them.
Yeah, I was going to say too, it sounds like, and also just with the findings from the report, it's a lot of kind of going back to the blueprint and the brief being the blueprint in question, so that's super interesting. So how do you deal with feedback that is based on personal opinion?
you can ask that person to rephrase it and not use the word I or me or my, and ask him to rephrase it from and get him to, he or she, to talk about the perspective of the target audience or take the perspective of the brand. Because that's a trick to remove personal opinion. We need to remove it. Because personal opinion, as Matt said, is we are not our target audience, but it can also be full with biases and subjective thoughts that are living in our subconscious and unconscious that got nothing to do with what a brand is trying to achieve.
Yeah, so another good trick is to make sure that as you go through the brief, if you know that personal opinion is a big factor in the organization, is to make sure that the target audience is represented in the brief in the right way as well, so everyone understands who the target audience is. Getting to a rich audience description can be tricky. We often default to generic terms or catch-alls, so making sure we're really clear on who that audience is, bringing that person's feedback back to the audience. That's great. Thank you very much for that. For that feedback that you shared. Do you think our target audience would share the same views as you? And I think just reminding people that we're designing work for our audience, not for them.
Yeah, excellent. Another interesting question. Did you cover any stats around how many times a brief changes throughout a project?
So go to our last study, the BetterBriefs project, and there is one in there around how whether briefs change after they've been briefed in, and stats around rebriefs as well. So there's some pretty compelling figures there that suggest that we're not treating briefs like contracts, that they're not final once they go in, that they are changing. There's elements that are changing, and some elements are unavoidable. We work in quite a dynamic environment, obviously, and things can change from day to day within our organization or even within the media landscape. But understanding what is fundamental to the strategy, and has that changed, or is it just updating with another execution on a different social platform of the same idea? They're two worlds apart when it comes to how much is changing. So just acknowledging, are we setting the course? Are we setting a new course, or are we maintaining the course just with some iteration?
Marketeers and agencies admit that rebriefs happen way too often.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yes. And just to reiterate to everyone in attendance, the report will be circulated. It's also living on the BetterBriefs website. It'll be up on WFAs as well as a recording of this session will be up for grabs soon. So stay tuned. And just definitely a lot of questions and just interesting comments from people. Another person had said we use a creative scale that takes our subjectivity and gets people to talk to that. So that kind of sounds like it speaks just to what you were talking about, is like kind of zooming out in a way and taking opinion out of it.
Yeah. So there's two ways to go about criteria. One way is having specific criteria or ingredients, as we shared with you, 4 of those. Another one can be outcome based. So a letter is a quite well used one, but make sure that everybody's very, very clear on what each level of the letter means. Make sure you have regular check-ins with your agency. By a contagious idea, we mean this type of idea. It works well as a standard as long as everybody's clear on what each level means.
And yeah, you need to map out the category, your work historically, stuff that you're aspiring to. So it does take work. It's not just, hey, we've got some labels now. Let's go and create some iconic work.
It has to be defined inside your category. Just pointing towards some awesome work that lives in a completely different category does not work. You need to define it from your own category.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but great. Thanks for that, sharing that.
Yeah. And how do you get the marketers to trust the creatives?
What an awesome question. I would love to hear more about that, because it is a partnership. You need each other to come up with an idea, right? You are briefing experts to develop something for you that you can't do yourself, right? because otherwise, why are you briefing them? Why are you giving them money?
Mhm.
So you need to trust them, and you need to trust their expertise, and that they don't behave and think the same way as you do is a good thing. Because if they think and behave the exact same as you do, they won't leap off your brief into an area that you can't think of. You want them to leap into a world. You want them to get into a zone where they come up with a whole bunch of things that you could never ever have thought of. That's why you're giving them money. Because if you don't trust them, then I think either end a relationship or ask yourself a question: What are we doing here?
There's a great quote from Richard Huntington in the report that you'll have access to, which talks about how myopic creative agencies can sometimes be. They don't understand the trials and tribulations that you go through as marketers to make sure that ideas see the light of day. Agencies don't get it sometimes. So part of your responsibility and building trust with them is to say, I am working as hard as I can to make sure this idea, we believe in this idea. We believe in this idea 100%, and we're going to work night and day to make sure it lives in its purest form throughout. Once it goes through the machine of our organization, right? If you're proving to your agencies that you're fighting for their ideas as much as they are, in ones that you believe in, of course,
Yeah.
not ones that you don't, because you should just kill those and look for something new. But in that regard, I think the agencies are fragile. The egos of agencies agency folks sometimes can be fragile. So they just want to know that you're on their side.
Yeah.
That's all they need sometimes.
Yeah, excellent. And just some other comments here. One advice is to ensure the brief is single-minded, but instead of trying to do it all, which often impacts creativity and uniqueness. So kind of sounds like, is focused on accomplishing versus, taking on too big of a, task. Yeah,
One brief equals one strategy.
there
Yeah,
you
if
go.
you want to say multiple things, then you may need multiple briefs, and that's perfectly okay. You might find two things that you want to say. Your brand does whatever, reliability and something else really well. Why don't you just create two briefs rather than jamming them together? It's inefficient. Like you're not going to achieve the scale of efficiency you think you would just by getting one idea that does both, right? So
Yep.
yeah, make sure that you pull them apart when necessary. That there is just one direction that you're putting forward.
Yes. And kind of going back to the question of trust with creatives, we have another comment from Anne. It is often said that great creative makes you feel rather uneasy. So how do you advise clients to be brave?
Yeah, I think we train our clients to actually get in touch with their emotions first, and sometimes um, ideas make you feel a bit anxious, or that you feel overwhelmed, or you feel a mix of emotions, or you feel something different than the person next to you. First of all, ideas and communications don't always have to make us feel happy to be impactful and effective. And second of all, in order for us to buy a great idea, a big idea, the brain needs to work really, really hard, because a great idea, a big idea will be new. It will have never been done before. So physically, for the brain, it is much harder to accept something that is completely new with risk that has never been done before than something that's familiar, which is a lot easier to buy. So big ideas evoke not always. It's not a happy dance in a meadow in the sunshine. It is hard work getting to these big, impactful, effective ideas. It is an art. It is a proper process that we need to go through. And the good thing is we can train this muscle. The more we train, the more we practice, the better we get at navigating this minefield.
The thing that we should be doing when we're evaluating creativity is buying ourselves as much time as we can to allow our brain to process what's on the table. So if we're feeling uneasy, then we don't know if that's a good or a bad thing yet. especially in the moment. So I would be turning that into a question for your agencies. How is this making you feel? How does this work make you feel? What do you think the risks associated with this work are? Have you thought about what impact this could have? Understanding your own risk appetite is really important as well. But throw it back, buy yourself time, right? This is all processing time.
How do we want the target audience to feel, and what kind of emotional journey do we want the target audience to go on? Because we might make them feel one thing and then a completely other thing as a surprise. We might take them on a journey.
Yeah. The other thing is you don't feel like you have to give feedback on the spot.
No.
If
Don't use your words to figure out what's in your brain.
No.
It is better not to give feedback at the end of the creative presentation, even though agencies will be dying to get any bit of feedback. The problem is that they will hang on every word that you give them, and they will explode it 100 times. It's just the way the creative brain works. So it's better to really thank them at the end of the creative presentation and say, listen, we really need to think about it. That's a good thing. We want to consolidate here as a team as well. Please give us 24 hours and we come back to you. We'll give you written feedback and verbal to go with it as well, rather than 5 people blurting something out and 5 different things. And the agency goes, well, what do we do with that?
Yeah, I've been in that moment where the next day I go, why did I say that? I don't know. I didn't know what else to comment on. So I said something and I now regret it. So anyway.
Excellent. Yeah, so just giving it some time to digest kind of and be thoughtful about your feedback and everything while, buying yourself time, like you said, Matt. We have just a couple more minutes. One other question. What surprised you the most in these findings?
I think the one around pride or lack of pride.
Mhm.
I think we were expecting it not to rock our socks off, but it being that low, the number of rounds almost doubling, and the belief that we're not making better work. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, for me, it was a consistency. I saw, more consistency in the data than I thought we would. So between B2C, B2B, I thought, we're always told that things are so different, the worlds are so different, but actually we're seeing the world in the same way. Across regions in the US and the UK and Australia, there's not much difference. So
the issues are the same everywhere.
The issues are the same. And I think, Brenna, you made a really good point that a lot of this is around alignment, right? Like we are aligned as a collective, as 2 parties that make up our industry, that we are quite aligned in our views, which is different to what we'd experienced in the past. So that level of alignment was, I think it's productive in that
it's a good starting point.
We're at the same starting point, right?
Yeah,
so it's good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I believe we are just about out of time, but thank you so much, Matt and Peter. This was wonderful. There should be a feedback poll popping up on your screen if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to rate us on a scale of 1 to 10 this webinar. And again, the report is live on the BetterBriefs website. It will be circulated to our WFA members, and a recording of this webinar will be available in the coming days. So thank you so much, everybody. And Peter, Paul, and Matt, thanks so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.